no wall. Because, of course, the church is the people. The parish is the people. It is not the walls. We do build walls to wrap the people in what they are doing in a variety of ways. And it's wonderful to know that history. And by the way, I need to say that I owe so much, especially to Barbara Willis, but also to Martha Roberts and others who have taught me a lot that I know about the walls and about what went on in them and around them and near them. This building and the set of walls is about 1823 in date. You know that we have three churches represented by our present one, which sits on the one of 1815, which sits on the one of 1732. And so we have, yes?
You need a pen, John. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. Will someone toss that pen down? Yes, how can I get you to make a list if I don't give you something to make a list with? Yes, ma'am. Three churches in sequence on this site. But this is only the second site of the church itself. And in fact, the very first church building of St. George's Parish was 20 miles away at Germanna until from 1720 to 1731, when the parishioners were so unhappy that Governor Spotswood made them go that far to go to church that they solved the problem in a very handy St. Georgian way. They burned down the earlier church. And thereupon felt free to begin to build a church here. This is more perfectly serious. Absolutely. Hey, they were St. George's. It wasn't an accident, of course. You know, you got a problem, let's fix it. So that our story has many, many layers right here, as well as many, many walls. The walls also, by the way, quite literally contain history in the little plaques and names that appear in windows and other places. And Tripp modestly did not say a word, sir, about what you're doing with that.
Oh, any place there's an inscription in the church, once I started doing the cemetery, I just got kind of carried away. So I was going around, and if there's something inscribed on it, I've added it to my little cemetery thing, and it, about tripled the size of it, I think. Because literally, like John says, everywhere you look around here, there's something with a plaque on it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's everywhere.
And then, of course, there are the other artifacts, like these two wonderful paintings. And I will say more about these folks, but I need to just remark on them for anyone who isn't familiar. That's Edward McGuire, and that's his wife, Judith Lewis McGuire, over there. And Edward McGuire came here at the age of 20 in 1813, too young to be ordained. The next year he was ordained. He tore down the colonial church. We think we don't do it when we have to. Built the next church. 30 years later he tore that down, 40 years later, and built this church. He's quite a guy, and I'll tell you more about the Reverend Edward McGuire. It's the reason why when you go in the church, the windows in the east end are in memory of Edward McGuire. And one of the two big marble plaques on the wall is in memory of Edward McGuire. And Judith Lewis is the lady who helped him through it. Judith Lewis was a daughter of Robert Lewis, who was the 10th of the 11 children of Fielding and Betty Washington Lewis. And Judith Lewis, well, I own two letters from Mr. McGuire in 1848 to John A. Washington, then the owner of Mount Vernon and the administrator of the estate of the late general. and the late general had died in 1799, but the estate was still going. Any of you who think lawyers can draw things out, can draw that to your attention. And in 1848, Mr. McGuire wrote to Mr. Washington trying to straighten out the indebtedness his wife had inherited from her father, Robert, who had inherited it from his father, Fielding, who owed money to General Washington. So when you think about the people of St. George's and you think about our lives are kind of complicated, let me tell you, theirs were too. But blessings on them, they persisted. And thus we have this wonderful history and this wonderful place and these wonderful hopes for the future. I don't know that Mr. Dean got a copy of the document. Are there extra copies available of the document? Just one of each. Anybody else not have those? I know that our two rectors hope to come in a minute. And so, are there still extra copies there? Good. So when they do, they can have it. What I've given you today is, first of all, just a very simple handout based on other people's work. And let me refer you to the side that has the building drawing on it. And that side shows you a conjectural drawing of the church built here in 1732. Now the vestry at that point was the vestry for this entire parish, this two-county parish, which eventually had 8 chapels and churches. But they were contracting to build 2 churches, actually, in 1732. This one, the Second Rappahannock Church, and then to the south, the Massaponax Church. And the Massaponax Church lasted until 1815, and then it went away. Ours lasted until about the same date when it was replaced, our wooden one. And the contract, as you see, is quoted there by Paula Felder in one of her marvelous, marvelous, marvelous books, Forgotten Companions. And from that, it is possible to reconstruct what that first building looked like. The drawing is actually a little neater than the building probably was, because it was covered with split weatherboarding, split clapboarding, which would have been rougher than this very trim-looking stuff. And it was finished in a typical way for 17th and early 18th century buildings. It was tarred, and that quite literally means tarred. You took a pot of dark brown tar and you painted it, and it finished actually to a kind of light, shiny brown. It may have been quite attractive. It led to a number of churches and chapels in Virginia being called Yellow Chapel. And so it was tarred. They did afford the fanciness of white paint, which was expensive, for the doors and the window trim. So you have to see this as tarred. David, there are 2 handouts. Did you all get a copy? Come on and take a look. And that church building survived then for a long time. Its predecessor at Germanna, 1720 to 1731, we don't know the appearance of. It probably was this way, only simpler. We hope to find out more. The University of Mary Washington, or whatever it is I work for, you never know. One of our students arrived on Friday wearing a T-shirt, and it says, I was at Mary Washington College before you. But in any case, whatever it is, owns the probable site. We own the archaeological site of Governor Spotswood's house, the enchanted castle at Germanna. And right in that parcel is a little area where we think the town was of Germanna, which included all those accoutrements, of course, of a Virginia town, the church, the courthouse, the jail, and the tavern. And that was the complete set that we needed.
John,
Higher, yes.
one quick note.
Yes.
As far as this church that you see on there, I'll try to have it here next week. One of the students actually made a little model of the church
Oh,
a
you're
couple of years
right.
ago. And it's here in the building someplace. I'll try to
You're
find it.
right.
But if you want to see what it looks like, I think it looks very, very similar to the Lambs Creek Church.
Lambs Creek is actually a further
Oh,
step
it's a
up
little
the
late.
ladder.
Okay.
Lambs Creek is a lot richer than I believe. I mean, you know, you're going to bring me a photograph someday of that 1732 church.
Sure. As soon as these people bring it to me.
Trip, I expected of you, man. If you look at the map underneath the church drawing, you will see that we are at the site called the Second Rappahannock Church on the river near Hazel Run. That's where we are, right here and now. And then earlier than that, there was a First Rappahannock Church down near Mott's Run. But earlier than that, there was the church at Germanna, 1720 to 1731, when it provided a little Episcopal illumination. And also on that map are chapels that we don't know about. For instance, the Fork Chapel is not the present Fork Church, as far as I know, which is a later 18th century building. And it may have been inherited from the parish before St. George's. Because, of course, with each county, as it was laid out, was a parish. So we had a parish, and then we became this parish, and this parish actually got subdivided, as you see, first with this north-south line and later with an east.